One of UCLA's top potential candidates, Jonathan Smith from Michigan State. I'm not sure they should really go all in, but he is certainly one of the short list guys for UCLA.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for making this show your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever your podcast, and it's available on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe, download. Thanks for being here. Welcome back, everydayers. Joined by Matt Sheehan of Locked On Spartans. He knows everything Michigan State, so you know exactly what we're talking about. We'll talk about that in a moment. This episode is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling out the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Mazda, move and be moved. So, obviously, with Matt hopping on the show, you know what that means. It's another edition of who will be UCLA's next coach. We're talking Jonathan Smith. Is it realistic in the third segment? Is there any strengths and weaknesses to be worried about? And this is a guy that UCLA was going after potentially in 2024 when Chip left initially. Should he have gotten the job then instead of going to Sparty when everybody was going all the way around in this coaching carousel? So, Matt, thanks for joining. You love, you hate Jonathan Smith. What's your thought right now in East Lansing?
I like Jonathan Smith. I thought he was a dynamite hire when Michigan State did it a few years ago. I thought he was one of the better coaches out there, and specifically for what he did at Oregon State, which was rebuild a program. Quite often the case when you're hiring a coach, you want them to rebuild something. So, look, it was a slow, methodical rebuild at Oregon State. The shakes were not too great here at Michigan State when he took over. There were some roster issues, some depth chart, some culture. It was the full kit and caboodle of what he had to change here at Michigan State, and it has been slow. It has been methodical. Are there some State fans that are already done with Jonathan Smith? Yes, there are. There are some that are already saying that, hey, I'll help pack his bags to UCLA if he wants to go. I am not quite in that camp. I think that the culture is better. I do like the work that he does in the transfer portal. I think that the offense took great strides just 3 games in against 3 not-so-great opponents, but still, you could see the development of Aiden Childs on the field too, other components of that offense. Are there things I'm concerned about? Recruiting, namely, being one. Yes, absolutely, but we can get into all that a little later. But put me in the camp of still liking Jonathan Smith. And I don't think that 15 games into a rebuild is enough of a sample size to say, get him back to his hometown of Pasadena over there, Zach. So,
and the funny thing is, you know, that's exactly what they told Deshaun Foster. But Michigan State was in a very different situation. Kind of remind our viewers what was the situation Jonathan Smith was heading into. It's very touchy, but what was the situation he headed into versus what Deshaun was heading into? Very different situations.
Yeah. It was. Oh, boy. There's a few ways to go about this question. The one that grabbed all the headlines, it turns out when your head coach brains on a sexual assault survivor and has her talk to the team about such an important and gravity topic, don't try to have relations with her in any which way possible, whether it's in person, whether it's over a phone. And certainly during the investigation, don't just fess up everything that you did. So that really speed ran the entire firing process for Mel Tucker right there. Now, beyond that, you want to go what actually happened on the field here. 2021 was great. Michigan State blew up on the scene. They went to the Peach Bowl. Kenneth Walker should have been at the Heisman ceremony. Sparty's back. We got 4 stars on campus, 5 stars on campus. Oh, my God, recruiting's never been like this. Except one problem, Zach. A lot of those 4 and 5 stars that visited campus never actually committed, so you're getting smaller recruiting classes, like in the high teens instead of the mid-20s. Mel Tucker, for as great as he was as a marketer for this program, he did not have much coaching acumen in the game itself. Many clock management issues. You didn't see the team really develop week in, months in and months out. So whether it was on the field, off the field, and even going back to the Mark D'Antonio days, and I hate to do this, Zach, because I love Mark D'Antonio. He brought me some of my favorite memories, not just as a Spartan fan, but in life. It kind of got derailed at the end of his year, too. He left the cupboard bare recruiting, so Mel Tucker had to do a lot of groundwork, and then he made that situation even worse. So Jonathan Smith, look, was it like showing up to Oregon State where they just had 1 win the season prior? No, but Boy, in the shadows of Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan, Notre Dame, who's all just doing great right now, and you got to rebuild Michigan State? That's a tall task for our friend Jonathan Smith over here. So I think they got the right guy, though, because been there, he's done that.
Yeah, very different situation to where Chip Kelly left to UCLA, left him in the dust, but it wasn't scandal-based. It definitely left a terrible taste in UCLA fans' mouth, and although everybody wanted to get rid of Chip Kelly for a long time, that situation was completely different. So he's really picking up the ashes of the scandal left by Mel Tucker and just kind of the abruptness of it, whether it was good, whether it was bad, and trying to bring some stability. So I'm not sure if 15 games in that scenario is truly good enough to compare, because it took them a little bit at Oregon State to build that, and all of a sudden they were really good. They were beating Oregon, and they couldn't even throw the ball, and they still beat an Oregon team with Oregon State. That's how good of a coach he was, and how we forget. And then he brought Aiden Childs along. He was able to get victories with DJ Oyinlele. He then went to Florida State and couldn't do anything. So that tells you, I think, enough about Jonathan Smith. What are those buyout contract ideas, and do you agree? Like, he is that good of a coach?
Yeah, let's talk these numbers because it's an incredibly relevant topic of conversation, especially with what has happened the last 3 months here in East Lansing. Starts with the new athletic director. He comes in, Jay Batt from Georgia Tech. Who cares about any of that? Not relevant to the conversation. What is relevant is that with the new athletic director, there was a cause or some legal term that was flipped in Jonathan Smith's contract with the new athletic director, that his buyout gets cut in half if a team wants to poach him away from Michigan State. So it was somewhere around $7 million. Should a team like UCLA want to come in, for example, but now a new athletic director, that's going to be in the ballpark of $3.5 million. Oh my God. In this day and age of college football, that might as well be 2 quarters and a shekel. That's nothing. Now there's another number, and this is also relevant too, in a way. If Michigan State were to fire Jonathan Smith, they have to give him, I believe it's 80% of his remaining contract. That's 33 big ones. That's $33 million. That would be the second highest buyout ever given to a college football coach, behind Jimbo Fisher. By the way, $76 million, would blow that out of the water still.
Crazy. Yeah.
Well, look, so those are the numbers. If UCLA wanted to poach him away, if Jonathan Smith said, yes, I agree, it's not that expensive. In Michigan State, here's the weird thing going on. It's like, if Jay Batt isn't convinced that he's the guy because he's a new athletic director, didn't hire Jonathan Smith, well, God, it's a lot easier to get rid of a guy if a team's offering to pay $3 million instead of you offering $33 million to see him out. But that includes backdoor deals. That would be, I think, a really, really fast tug of the cane there for Jay Batt just in 1 year of Jonathan Smith. But so those are the big numbers right there, not to make this short answer a long one.
It's all good. And just to remind folks, what is Michigan State's record right now in 2025 and what was in 2024? What's his overall record these 2 years?
So 3-0 right now. That's right. Suck at Western Michigan. Suck at Boston College. And that's right, Youngstown State. You think you're left out of this? Go ahead and suck at Penguins. I'll show you to come to Spartan Stadium and think you're going to get a victory. And that's off the heels of a 5-7 season last year. We did a lot of sucking it last year.
And hey, you just think, you had 2 coaches, new guys coming in 5-7, and just think how dramatically things shifted 3 games in, just a month in, less than a month into the season, and Deshaun Foster's out, and Jonathan Smith has already been rumored to take that job. Do you think if UCLA have acted faster, would Jonathan Smith have been a UCLA coach in 24 versus, or 23 to 24 versus him being at Michigan State right now if they had gotten rid of Chip in November of 23?
I do. And, there's also another West Coast school that had a very similar situation just weeks, if not months, right after Michigan State hired him. But Washington, that job opened up when, oh God, why am I blanking on the guy's name? That's
Kalen DeBoer.
Thank you.
Yes.
My goodness, I'm ashamed of myself for not coming up with that name, but he left. And then that was a few weeks after, Smith took that job, and he also had coaching ties to Washington. So there was a big conversation hey, do you think there's any buyer's remorse? Do you think he regrets coming here instead of Washington? And yeah, he's more comfortable out there. The resources at Washington, I don't think, are that drastic from Michigan State. UCLA, I don't think much different, especially being from the hometown of Pasadena. West side of the country, that's where your recruiting ties are. You know the area, I would hope. So, yes, I actually do an alternate timeline. If everything worked out with Chip Kelly saying goodbye at a not incredibly inconvenient time, yes, I do think so. Zach, I also thought that we'd be having this conversation at the end of 2026, because this has crossed my mind of, hey, let's say Jonathan Smith, he gets the boys going at Michigan State. Sean Foster not really cooking over at UCLA. They want to cut ties with him. This could get a little interesting here. Deshaun just speed ran through that whole.
It just burnt. That hot seat is burnt.
Just
it is
amazing how fast that all went, man.
And the funny thing is, I wonder how much, just because of the national spotlight UCLA is under with Nico. Yeah. Like how much that just became even more of a problem. Because if you don't bring Nico, then you're like, okay, the expectations, it's a whole different story. Wow. But then you lose to New Mexico. You're blown out by New Mexico. You're down big early to UNLV. Embarrassed early in that same time slot. Michigan State's playing USC this week. They were embarrassed by Utah. Pretty much 3 embarrassing performances. And 15 games is a pretty small number, but you had to make a change. And UCLA fans, I've said this again and again on this podcast. Unfortunately, we are dreadfully apathetic right now towards program. The apathy is at an all-time high. You see the Rose Bowl. It's been packed. I promise you it's been packed. There's people in there before January 1st. I promise you. It's just not been the case for years since COVID and since Chip Kelly really took over. That's just the unfortunate reality.
Man, that's tough. Rose Bowl, great stadium, by the way. I was lucky enough to go, and Michigan State was still on top of the college football world back in the day. But yeah, believe me, I get apathy. There's some of that here in my own fan base, especially the last few years when the team is either mathematically eliminated from making a bowl game or it's seeming like, okay, this is the rest of the schedule. Very unlikely we win these games, but I just feel like it is like even a different level of apathy over at UCLA. So look, I'm glad you said it. I'm glad I didn't be the one that had to say it, but what would have to get this fan base back? Do you think Jonathan Smith would add enough sizzle to that steak to get people back at the
I feel like he's certainly on the short list of contenders, I believe. If he really wants it, he can be in that interview hiring. The funny thing is that with the way it played out, he would have probably maybe won that job easily in 24, 23 if he wasn't recently hired, if UCLA made a switch in late November. I personally, at this very moment, I'm not so sure. I'm kind of we're going to go through a lot of coaches on this show, and I'm thinking if you want to go the Bruin alum route, you can go Tony White. If you want to go the young and up-and-comer head coaching experience, you go Jason Eck. But then if you want to go coordinator route, maybe look at Oregon. And then there's been all sorts of coaches thrown out there, which can be detailed in this pod. I think he would bring a little bit of energy, but what's different from Chip Kelly, from a former, there are so many guys out there. I'm not sure if he's going to drive the interest, but if he gets results, immediately it'll happen. I just don't think it's going to come out in fan interest until you win games, which is why, Matt, we're going to talk strengths and weaknesses of Jonathan Smith next. So stick around. We'll talk about that on Locked On UCLA. This episode is brought to you by Mazda's Moving the Game Forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than just put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and keep moving the game forward. This week's moment that moved the game forward was Mateen Baghani's 51-yarder. Knocked it in, proved that UCLA doesn't fully have a special teams problem in the kicking game. Maybe putting, but when it comes to kicking field goals, Mateen Baghani, money bags, if you will, his nickname, he has moved the game forward and helped UCLA put points on the board by solidifying that these last couple of years. And when you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. The weather is cooling down and the days are getting shorter, and that has me wanting to make my home feel even cozier. And when it comes to cozifying your space this fall, Wayfair, it's the place to go. Wayfair is everything you need to set the mood. Think about setting the mood for the season. Whether it's comfy recliners, warm bedding, autumn decor, even an espresso machine that can help you get your favorite latte at home. And if you're recently picking up products from Wayfair, you can get a comfy throw blanket, new chairs, and it's completely transforming of a space. So think about it. It's a perfect time to set your home up for fall so you can enjoy those cozy nights in and with family and friends. Cozify your space with Wayfair's curated collection of easy, affordable fall updates. From comfy recliners to cozy bedding and autumn decor, you'll find it all for way less at Wayfair.com. That's Wayfair.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. All right, there's a lot to like about Jonathan Smith, and that's why we have Matt Sheehan to tell us the truth. Lay it on us. Is there a lot of strengths? You're teasing about the recruiting earlier. That hasn't been a strength, but he does have a quarterback who I think has another year of eligibility. And if you bring in Jonathan Smith, maybe you bring that quarterback along with him because Childs followed him from Oregon State to Michigan State, if I'm not mistaken. But that's a whole nother ballgame. Recruiting. You got to get a new quarterback. Got to get an offensive line, D-line at UCLA to even be successful at all. What are the strengths and weaknesses of Jonathan Smith? Clearly, rebuilding is kind of one of them, at least at Oregon State.
We keep Aiden Childs, first of all. Like, we are going to chain him to whatever tree that we have to. And, like, no, you stay here. This is your home now, Aiden Childs. Or sweet child. No, I would miss him way too much. I will foot the NIL bill myself. Look, the strengths on the field, the development of Aiden Childs, of course. I think the offense is moving in the right direction, and that is with dynamic playmakers, guys like Childs, obviously. Nick Marsh, they bring in Omari Kelly, great transfer from Middle Tennessee State. Okay, you're seeing the vision right there from an offensive-minded head coach. And just like you said, Zach, getting production out of DJU, getting an offense that actually scores points when Goldbranson was their quarterback. Okay, that's some coaching acumen right there.
And you say in a bizarre world where you keep Nico in 2026, like that could be somewhat unique if you get some offensive line and he stays. You have a guy that says, hey, we worked with this with DJU. I've worked with Aiden Childs. Let's work with this. And that could be a much better team in 2026 if they just get some protection with a new head coach and a new philosophy. But, you know, and you can keep on going. He's been showcasing that development, kind of highlight what's the changes Childs has made these last couple of years.
So the changes that Childs has made here, I mean, cerebrally. I mean, look, he's a gifted athlete. He tried to do way too much with the ball because had to. I mean, he was the team last year. And also, young quarterback, new starter. So what he's been doing this year as opposed to last year, being way more careful with the ball, but still being a dynamic playmaker. They're also deploying him on runs with his legs. I mean, but that's stuff you can't even coach. But the strides that he's made with just being smart with the ball, knowing when and when not to make that big-time throw, like it has been leaps and bounds from last year. But I'm glad that you brought up you need an offensive line, defensive line, because that's another strength that I wanted to get to here. And some Michigan State fans are a little underwhelmed at this, and that is transfer portal management. I actually think that's been a strength for Michigan State here. And no, it hasn't been home runs at every position. But, Zach, we were sent to the grocery store to get 80 different items, and we were handed a $20 bill. Like, there were so many issues this offseason that had to be covered in the transfer portal. Wide receiver, offensive line, a brand new secondary room, basically, like starters, backups, and the backups of the backups. And then the defensive line needed some help, too. Those were all glaring issues. Like Michigan State, we have resources. We're doing okay in NIL, but when you have that many problems, that money gets stretched thin. You got to be savvy with who you are getting. I think they did a great job with receiver. They've really gotten some good offensive linemen, not just this year, but last year out of the transfer portal. And the secondary, they're fine. Now, the big issue here is that our pass rush still left a lot to be desired, even out of the portal. But for the most part, from this year and last year, even before his first season, I think he managed the transfer portal pretty well. Now, can I contradict myself and also talk out of both sides of my mouth? Because I think a strength topic will also be a weakness topic here, Zach. And let me explain, or I already just sound so stupid that you're not even
No, I mean, you're good, but I will say $20 goes for a lot less in California. That's it
ain't go too far here in Michigan, let me tell you that. So look, I know we're going to talk about recruiting, we're going to bemoan recruiting, but like in a way, there's also something to be said about how well he closes in recruiting too. This is one of our talking points every June, is that when he gets a kid on campus, it's not even 100% hit rate, but it's north of 50%. Like, and that's pretty impressive. Now, the downside with recruiting, to get into the weaknesses, it's a lot of 3-stars. It's a lot of kids rated outside the top 800. Now, I'm going to swing it back to the positive though, Zach. That's right. A lot of whiplash going on. Very recently, just this last week, there are 6 guys that have been named 4-stars in the Michigan State 2026 recruiting class. All 6 of those guys, I believe, were identified when they were 3-stars. So they do have good talent identification, and they are great at closing and identifying what battles they could actually win. So it's kind of a catch-22. On one hand, they're not really going into battles against the Michigans, Ohio States of the world. But on the other hand, well, yeah, that's because they would never win those battles anyway. So I think it's kind of like a 50-50 draw of recruiting. It depends if your glass is half empty or half full with that whole topic, though. Did I confuse you there?
No, I
okay.
picked that up. I picked
Okay.
that up. Good at transfer portal, good at identifying. But if you want to excite the fan base with exclusive 5-stars, you're not going to find that. But sometimes you need to identify and develop, which I was talking with Steve Wiltfong the other day of Rivals, the vice president of the Rivals on 3, big recruiting on this channel. And he was talking about how UCLA needs to be a developmental program, like 18 to 22-year-olds, freshmen to seniors. And that's kind of what I think Deshaun was going for. He just wasn't good enough in 15 games to earn more time. And if Jonathan Smith is already kind of doing that and UCLA needs that developmental program, it's going to be a lot of, it's groaning at the number near your recruiting class, I believe. But if the kid can develop, then all of a sudden that might be the way you need to go, because this is a rebuild and not an overnight turnaround like a Kurt Signetti, I think.
Yeah, I guess I'm just waiting. A lot of fans are waiting. Okay, well, when are we going to start leveling up in competition for these recruiting battles? But look, it just boils down to something so simple. Like, winning cures everything, right? Like, it's hard to be in a family room of a kid that's got offers from Notre Dame, from Penn State, from SEC schools, coming off of 5 and 7 seasons saying, hey, come play for Sparty. Like, I don't think he's stupid. I think he gets in these battles deliberately with teams he knows that he can win. And that's just what we got to live with until you get better, until you start putting guys in the NFL, which Michigan State hasn't done recently, until you start winning bowl games. So, look, that's part of why the slow rebuild is happening. And you do just need to rely on high school recruiting too, because the transfer portal doesn't fix everything. You do need to build depth through the high school trenches, which is something the last guy did not do, Mel Tucker. Can I just give you a fun fact? I think Mel Tucker was here for, 3 off seasons, maybe 2. How many linebackers did he have committed to Michigan State in his 3 recruiting cycles? It was
was it more or less than the amount of scandals he had and lack of recruits that he had in Michigan State?
Oh, boy. On the record or off the record scandals? Definitely less. It was 2 linebackers the entire time here at Michigan State. So, Jonathan Smith had to go shopping for a few linebackers and backup linebackers immediately here. But, again, this is just a long way of saying that I learned through the Mel Tucker era, hey, it's cool to get some good recruits sometimes. You really got to fill out those classes, though, or that depth issue is going to catch up to you 2-3 years after that class is signed.
But so basically what you're saying is Jonathan Smith really good at trying to fix the recruiting issues. Deshaun Foster was trying to do that with Chip Kelly. It's just the matter of maintaining relationships, can hit the portal. I don't know if UCLA has been as successful hitting every position in the portal. Of course, you see Nico, who just came to UCLA. I don't know if that's winning or just being lucky or situational, or if that's just like kind of we're coming to UCLA, let's just deal with it because I have nowhere else to go. But, that's a kind of a win. But it seems like Jonathan Smith is winning, and you're slightly convincing me that he should be closer to my 1A, 1B list than off you're my top 5, but I'm not interested list. Now, let's talk about, is this realistic? We've talked about buyout, but is this a guy that's realistically willing to just leave after 2 seasons? We'll talk about that next on Locked On UCLA. Well, let's talk to you about how this episode is brought to you by Square, your favorite neighborhood spots run on Square, because there are certain businesses that truly make the neighborhood feel like home, whether it's the local sports bar that's packed on game days, the coffee shop that knows your order by heart, or the corner deli that's been serving your community for decades. These are the places that bring your neighborhood together. And when neighborhood businesses thrive, the whole neighborhood thrives. And for me, the local spot we're highlighting today, Howlin' Ray's. If you're listening to this podcast and you haven't seen Howlin' Ray's and waited in line for hours before it's open on certain days, select days that it's open for its special hours, great chicken, Nashville hot chicken sandwiches are the thing right now. So you got to go check out some Howlin' Ray's, and it's a fun vibe. So Square is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. You can go to square.com/go/LockedOnCollege to learn more. But before you go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy you did. Square, see you in the neighborhood. It's almost the weekend. It's time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. And just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash streaks, saving more every time you order, these players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. For UCLA, it was Mateen Begani. He delivered in a big way. For UCLA, Begani has been knocking through field goals. He's the highlight of this show because he is the one bright spot for this team right now. He is solidifying the kicking game. It is no hesitation. He came through, no delay. And if you've been watching this team week after week, it wasn't a fluke. Dating back to last year, Mateen Begani is on a streak. And just like Begani delivered for UCLA, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays with DoorDash streaks. You can save every Saturday. You order, stack it up all season long, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash deals and credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive for your game day. Fuel it only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Find the promo period available through November 18th. I'm going to straight up say it, Matt. We talked about this off the air just a moment ago. UCLA fans, you heard my open. Matt has convinced me that I'm kind of leaning towards Jonathan Smith. I don't know if I have a front runner at this moment. There's so many coaches to talk about. Maybe you're trying to just leave. You're trying to get Jonathan Smith and just let him have UCLA and be like, we want a new coach at Michigan State.
That's
but
right.
I'm convinced Jonathan Smith would not be a bad hire. Now, the thing is, this is a whole rebuild at UCLA. Is it realistic? Is this a guy that would leave and abandon after 2 years? Is East Lansing home? Or is it a spot that he was just there before he eventually lands at UCLA? I'm convinced that this would be a good hire. But could the situation work with the buyout and the 2 years only at Michigan State?
The other day on Locked On Spartans, we did talk about this because it was inevitable that being from Pasadena, his name would pop up. And I think I said 0.5% chance I could actually see this happening. And now that a few days have gone by, listen to what number I'm about to say. I think it's 5%. Again, not 55. I'm not saying 85. I don't think this actually happens, but I don't think it's completely just a foregone conclusion that he certainly will not do it. And the original reason I gave a few days ago is that, hey, sometimes home is just calling. As someone that has basically, grown up in the same city my entire life, I find comfortability here. I really like where I'm from. And yeah, why would I leave? Home is home, right? But then again, Zach, is there a situation where a few weeks go by, a few months go by here in East Lansing, teams 5-7, teams 6-6. I mean, the fan base is kind of turning against him. There's apathy. He's seeing home. He's seen those palm trees off in the distance. There's a small buyout that UCLA has to pay. Can they give him a salary that is comparable to what he's making here in East Lansing? And does he want to say, well, you know what? I don't actually mind doing another rebuild for 2 years. I'll just forget the last few years that I've had, and let's just go do it all at a place where I have better recruiting ties, a place where I just know a lot better than the Midwest, a place where I'm a lot more comfortable. That's not too far-fetched, I guess, the more I think about it. Again, this all goes down to maybe the new athletic director doesn't give the vote of confidence at the end of the year, and not like he would ever come out with a statement saying, oh, no, he's got to leave. Or not like our athletic director would ever call yours and saying, get him out of here, please. We will pay the buyout for you. Just get him out of here, please.
Oh, that'd be juicy. I love that.
That would be very juicy. That would be very juicy. But I just don't see that happening. But man, there is a human aspect to this of returning home. And if he doesn't mind having to do another rebuild, sure, that's why it's 5%. But the 95% lies in, you are in the midst of a rebuild right now. You just did one at Oregon State. Do you want to do another one at UCLA where it is
without seeing the fruits of your victory? Why the fruits of your
labor?
Why go do it at UCLA? That's where the situation is you go back. Yes, you can recruit. You can go change some guys' minds. SoCal is a hotbed for recruiting. You don't need the 5 stars to turn around your roster. I would say it's reasonable for the buyout. UCLA, I think, is a little cheaper because if they're going to want to promise Jonathan Smith that they're going to commit to facilities, to recruiting, to overhauling just about everything, rev share, NIL, mixing that all together. That's a lot they have to commit. And then the $3.5 million just piles on top. Any real football program, that should not be a barrier. If they're like, Jonathan Smith is my guy, then they should go out and get him and be like, we're buying you out, Jonathan, come over here. But the thing is, if it's 6-6, and if he's kind of in this weird state with Michigan State fans, is that really an attractive hire for UCLA? That's how it's interesting.
That's the other thing too. It's a few people would probably have to say no on the UCLA side, but then again, can you fall in love with the guy that he was at Oregon State rebuilding that program? You certainly can. That's why I'm still like there's not a lot of sizzle, there's not a lot of pizzazz around Michigan State's program right now, even with a 3-0 start. But that's because at least, I mean, I'm not patient with a lot of things in life, but like I would like to see this through for a few years. I don't know. So it's half just like, do you want to go through all this again? Do you want to, make more inroads at a place that would be new, even though you're kind of still familiar with the place? But also, too, like, would UCLA be putting up the money? Like, would they be giving him the resources that he has at Michigan State, which I don't think is as bad. Like, look, of course, not Ohio State. We're certainly not Michigan. We're not Notre Dame. But I would like to think that we're squarely in the second tier of resources in college football.
And it's not like that we're far removed from Michigan State having success, packing it out, and,
Right.
competing for a CFP and in the Rose Bowl. Like, that's not that far removed when they were on the primetime games for the docket for the Big Ten.
I know the record doesn't match it, but, like, we do have the resources here to compete in the Big Ten. Does UCLA, though, for football? I mean, obviously there's no shortage of, like, money at any Big Ten program, but at a basketball school in this day and age where you got to decide where you're going to allocate your resources, like, that is a legitimate conversation, is it not? Do you think that there are resources out there to pry away a sitting head coach at a Power 4 job like this?
I mean, considering they went, cheap in the Deshaun Foster hire, if they didn't want to fire Chip Kelly, they could have had Jonathan Smith before. They could have convinced. They could have maybe gone after a Jed Fish. They could have gone after those. But I think there's also cheaper buyouts. They could go after, if you want to go after local or former alums, that's where Tony White comes in. You can go after a coordinator, which is a little cheaper, and you want a young and up-and-comer. Jonathan Smith, whatever you say, you bring up the good point about him being in another rebuild. At some point, you just get tired of that. Whether he's ready to do that or not, he just might be a little more irritable. He might, those things might pop up like, I'm doing this again? Like, that's where it's like, UCLA, it's like, you come across, you have this, your friend, you're talking to her, you're like, oh yeah, but just, it never works out for it to be in a relationship because the timing doesn't work. And it's because you're like, man, I could have gotten out of my own relationship when I realized it wasn't working. And then, had a perfect opportunity to click. And in that UCLA case, it was Chip Kelly. They didn't get out of it. And then you're like, oh, I'm just going to go for the quick fix. Instead of naming Deshaun interim head coach in 24, they gave him a decent deal for somebody who's never had coordinator experience. And that's where it depends on who makes the decision. How many resources are they willing to commit? That's where the chancellor, Julio Frank, is going to have to decide even higher up than UCLA's athletic director. And if they go cheap, no chance they get Jonathan Smith. And if this is their guy, then there's no reason why they shouldn't go get him.
Not to count other people's money, but like, you do need like a Daddy Warbucks situation where, okay, someone is going to inject a ton of cash and resources into football. It might take one people, might take two people, but why would Jonathan Smith leave Michigan State to go do a rebuild at UCLA when there's arguably, maybe not even arguably, like just less resources and more apathy at UCLA than he has here? But of course, like this can just all change with just the interest of one or two donors. Like it sounds ridiculous, but that just is the fact of the matter here in this age of college football. I mean, go ask Texas Tech how things are going. Things seem to be going pretty okay after a few guys put their money together and decided they wanted to raise an NFL team over there. So it can be done, but will it be done? And would Jonathan Smith be interested if it's not done? I don't know, but the only thing that, will always have me just thinking in the back of my head that it could happen this year is Home's always calling. You brought up a really good point with, not just recruiting ties, but just the quality of recruits down there too. Like guys ranked in the 50s for the state of California are cracking the top 10 here in Michigan. Like, I mean, that's a pretty talented state you got over there, Zach. So
there's a
lot
lot
of things to think about. There's a
I
ton
think
to
the
think
biggest
about.
thing, Matt, you've convinced me to have him higher up in guys I want to have at UCLA.
Okay.
So in terms of if you're listening, you're watching, he's higher up now on my list of guys I think UCLA should seriously consider. Situationally, I think he's closer to the bottom in terms of timing.
Yeah.
Contract is not the worst, as you mentioned.
No, it's not.
But a public UC school, they're already paying millions of dollars to Cal for Calamoni just to move to the Big Ten. I think situationally it's low. They can have him. It's out there, but you have to commit. And I think there's ways to get something similar, more UCLA heavy, maybe something younger, something different, and have more of an exciting younger coach that can connect with the fans, connect with the players, despite what Jonathan Smith's track record is, success at Oregon State and landing a pretty big job at Michigan State so far.
I think you're right there, and that's a knock that a lot of Michigan State fans have right now, is that like he's just kind of a boring guy. He doesn't market this program as well as he maybe should, and like, that's his personality. Like, he's a steady Eddie, cool hand Luke. He's always a 5 out of 10, and
that's not what UCLA needs. That is
exactly
not what they need.
You know what? That's not going to get butts in the seats in the first year, maybe not even the second year. Who knows the third year? But yeah, you kind of do need, like, you know who's available right now, Zach? Actually. You need Mel Tucker. You need someone that knows how to market a program. You know what? Hey, restart the episode. Hit the restart button. We're doing this all from the top. We're getting Mel Tucker in LA on a $50,000 a year salary. Oh, man, he gets back employed. You guys get good marketing. It doesn't even take a dent in your athletics budget. I think it just solved UCLA athletics.
Yep. And for legal purposes, before people start hitting the comments, it's clearly a joke. If you can't take a joke, it's legal purposes. The satire is real. Oh, my goodness. It's so real.
I'll get Mel Tucker's people in contact with your people, and we'll get this done by, September 21st. We got this. We got this.
We'll have a coaching.
You're welcome. Man. Get used to a lot of the keep chopping motion on the sideline when your team just committed a 15-yard penalty. That's a backbreaker. We saw a lot of that here in East Lansing.
Matt Sheehan, speaking from experience on the previous regime, the current regime, and the most important thing, Jonathan Smith, quality hire, good football coach, doesn't seem likely that it'll work out for UCLA. But things could change.
But could.
It could.
Yeah.
It really could. We'll find out. But Matt Sheehan of Locked On Spartans, go check out his stuff. We're going to have a crossover soon. It was just funny. This was an I Want to Steal Your Coach episode. Now it's going to I Want to Beat Your Coach episode soon. That's
Please don't.
The weird.
I'd be so sad. It's
gonna. Who would have thought? We're week 3, week 4, and at this point, I want to steal your coach, but let's also beat your coach. I think that if UCLA beats Michigan State, I don't want Jonathan Smith. I think that's kind of
that's a good qualifier. I like that.
If you lose to UCLA, I don't want your coach right now.
This makes I just delete the whole episode too. That would make it all null and void. Yeah, that's a good point. I'll see you in a few minutes, Zach. This is great. We'll see each other in 10 days, I think, or
I feel
2.5 weeks.
It's coming soon. We'll have Matt again talking Michigan State football, and I'll talk UCLA football for a game. Yeah, they still play. There's still 2025 football, even though we're looking ahead to 2026 on a bye week. Matt Sheehan of Locked On Spartans. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for downloading, liking, comment, subscribing if you're in person. Thanks for saying hi if you're everydayers. Thanks for tuning in. We'll have plenty more episodes of rumors, coaches, realistic, non-realistic, all that and more on this channel. Like, comment, subscribe, download. Thanks for watching this episode. This has been Locked On UCLA. Zach signing off saying, go Bruins.